Chapter 6 of Gooney Greene. Today, Gooney said on Wednesday, I'm going to tell you about Catman and the cow. Maybe you've noticed that I'm wearing my cat and cow outfit today. The students nodded their heads. They had noticed. Gooney was wearing an orange fur jacket. Over her shoulder was slung a purse made from brown and white cowhide. Sometimes storytellers have special outfits that they wear. I think that's fine as long as it doesn't interfere with the story, Gooney continued. You can buy fake cat whiskers and ears, for example, but I would never wear such a distracting costume. Would you wear a tail? Beanie asked. I know somebody who had a cat tail and ears at Halloween. Put on your thinking caps, class, Gooney said. Think back to when I talked about Catman last week. No tail, the entire class said, all except Felicia Ann, although she did look up from the floor. That's right, Catman has no tail. I would tell about the lawnmower accident, and it would be an absolutely true story, but I never use violence in my stories. Oh, good, Keiko said. Violence makes me cry. Gooney smoothed her fur jacket and did her breathing exercises. Deep breath, let it out. Deep breath, let it out. I know a lot of you have been worried about Catman, she began. I certainly have, Mrs. Pigeon said. I've been thinking about Catman ever since he flew out of that flying carpet. By the way, Mrs. Pigeon, Gooney said, I do want to mention how lovely you look today. Mrs. Pigeon blushed a little. She was still wearing her high-heeled shoes with the buckles, and today she was also wearing a rhinestone butterfly perched in her hair. In fact, the whole class looks quite lovely, Gooney pointed out. She looked around. Malcolm, would you stand up? Malcolm rose from his seat and held his shoulders back. He was still wearing his polka dot bow tie, and today he had added a plaid belt. Keiko? Gooney said. Keiko giggled and stood. She had a bright green bow in her hair and a long, shiny silk scarf wrapped around her neck. Me, called Chelsea. Can I stand up? She did, and the class could see that she was wearing a fringed cowboy vest over her best dress. Me, everyone, all but Felicia Ann was calling out. But Gooney said, later, after the story. I'm ready to begin now. She took one more deep breath, let it out, and then began. Beloved Catman is consumed by a cow. Once upon a time, not long ago, after they had left China, Gooney and Catman found themselves flying through the air on a carpet. The carpet landed in a meadow near a large brown and white cow who was contentedly eating wildflowers. The flowers were purple loosestrife. The carpet unrolled, and Gooney stood up and looked around. She could see in the distance her father's car quickly disappearing down the road. Beside her, Catman also stood up. He had become very furry and fat, the way cats do when they are frightened. My cat becomes very enlarged when my brother brings his dog to visit, Mrs. Pigeon said. Then she put her hand to her mouth. Oh, I'm sorry, Gooney I interrupted. That's all right, Gooney replied. Maybe this is a good time for everyone to tell cat getting big suddenly stories. Many children did. Barry Tuckerman's grandmother's cat became huge and his tail stood straight out in the air when a groundhog appeared in the yard. Chelsea's cat became enormously fluffy and hissed and spat when the veterinarian gave her a shot. Tricia told how her cat got very, very fat and then one day had 7 kittens inside the laundry basket. Good, so you all understand about cats. Now I'll continue, Gooney announced. The cow, who had some purple blossoms dangling from her mouth, looked very surprised when a person and a cat and a carpet all landed in her meadow. She thought about what to do and decided that moving to a different corner of the meadow would be the best choice. Carefully, moving slowly in cow-like fashion, she strolled away toward a corner where yellow cosmos and oxeye daisies were in bloom. Gooney attention was on the car, which had now disappeared around a bend in the road. She was a little worried about the disappearance of the car. But Catman didn't care about the car. Catman had never liked the car at all. In fact, Catman had hated the car, and he was glad to see that it had disappeared. But he was very interested in the cow. Catman had never seen a cow before. Now he watched with fascination as the cow moved slowly toward the other corner of the meadow. He liked the way the cow walked, heavily and with determination. He liked the way the cow smelled of thick, sun-warmed cowhide and meadow flowers. And as he scampered along behind the cow, and the cow noticed and mooed, Catman liked the way the cow sounded. It was comforting, the low, throaty sound of a moo, and in the background was the buzzing of flies. Catman began to purr. In the distance he could hear Gooney Bird calling, "Catman! Catman!" But he didn't care. He found himself falling in love with the cow. "I like romance," Beanie said. "Me too," Keiko said with a tiny sigh. Gooney Bird waited a moment, but no one else said anything, so she continued her story. In the evening, the farmer, Mr. Henry Shinhofen, came to the meadow and called the cow. It was time to take her into the barn to be milked. The cow liked the farmer, who was soft-spoken and kind, and she liked the barn, which was airy and dark and smelled of hay. And she liked being milked, which felt a little like sneezing, something that needs to be done now and then. So she cheerfully followed the farmer when he called her. Catman cheerfully followed the cow. Mrs. Clara Shinhofen, the farmer's wife, was feeding the chickens when her husband walked past, leading the cow. "My word," she said, "look, there's a cat with no tail following the cow." "So there is," said her husband. "Perhaps he is hungry. We should feed him." They tried to take Catman into the house to be fed, but he refused to leave the cow. So they brought him a bowl of tuna fish and gave it to him in the barn. When Mr. Shinhofen milked the cow, he squirted some into a dish for Catman. That night, Catman, who was by now completely and hopelessly in love, curled up beside the cow and slept. He has slept there ever since. During the day, he goes to the meadow with the cow, and while the cow eats wildflowers, Catman chases field mice and butterflies, listens to the buzzing of flies, and smells the warm and pleasant odor of cowhide. Here's the picture. Gooney Bird paused. "Questions?" she said. Keiko raised her hand. "I was waiting for the bad part," she said. "I was going to cover my ears." "What bad part?" asked Gooney Bird. "You know," Keiko whispered, "where the cow ate Catman." Gooney Bird looked surprised. "The cow didn't eat Catman. The cow hardly notices that Catman is there. The cow eats wildflowers." "But you said," Keiko began. "Yes, you said," Malcolm called. Mrs. Pigeon stood up. "Remember the title of the story, children?" she said. They all tried. "How a Cow Ate Catman," Barry Tuckerman called out. "How Catman Got Eaten Up by a Cow," Tricia said. Mrs. Pigeon shook her head. She picked up her notebook. "I wrote it down," she told them. "Beloved Catman is consumed by a cow." "Let me finish," Gooney Bird suggested. She went on with the end of the story. That night the farmer and his wife turned on the TV and saw the interview with the little girl who had rode a flying carpet. "If anybody finds my cat," the little girl, it was Gooney Bird, said, "please call the TV station." So Mr. Henry Shinhofen, the farmer, called. "I have that cat here in my barn," he said. "Orange and white cat, no tail. But I gotta tell you," he said, "I don't think you'll be able to take it away. It won't leave my cow." "Won't leave your cow?" the TV lady said. She sounded puzzled. "Nope," said the farmer. "Wouldn't even leave for tuna fish. We had to take the tuna fish and put it right beside the cow." "Why?" "Sometimes happens," the farmer explained. "I guess you'd call it something like love. That cat is downright consumed by the cow." "And the cow is consumed by the cat?" the TV lady asked. "Nope. Cow doesn't care one way or another, but she doesn't step on the cat. She's careful cow." The TV people called Gooney Bird and her parents. They told them where Catman was and that Catman was consumed by a cow. So the Greene family drove their car back to the meadow and visited Catman. Catman was nice to them, but they could tell that he was not consumed by the Greene family. He was consumed only by the cow. So they kissed him goodbye. Then they hugged and kissed the farmer and his wife, and they all sang "Farmer in the Dell" and danced in a circle on their tiptoes. They all lived happily ever after. The end.